Good old technology is always can always be a challenge sometimes. So, but we're gonna see how things go. But I have a guest that I met last weekend, and well, maybe it's a couple weekends. I don't know. Time goes so doggone fast, but but we met at Left Coast Trime and got to chatting. I was watching one of his panels, but I'm going to bring him up on the screen here. We'll see how it goes. Hi, Scott. How's it going? Scott Graham is going to be our guest tonight.
Randy, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great to get to chat with you some more. I know we got to chat a little bit. You guys were you were part of a panel talking about national park books and stuff, and we'll get into a lot of that because that's a kind of a passion for me because I love our national parks, and we all have some concerns about what's going to happen to them going forward. But we'll get into that. But go ahead and give us a little rundown on yourself. Tell everybody all about yourself and all the important stuff.
Well, let's see. I'm a native, more or less, of Durango, Colorado, down in the southwest corner of the state. And I grew up doing lots of outdoors activities with parents who liked doing a lot of the national park sorts of things that you were just mentioning. And then was able to stay in Durango with my wife. My wife's a physician in town, and we were able to raise our two sons doing the same sorts of outdoor activities that I was raised doing. And so I've basically then gone on to base my mystery series that's set in the national parks on a lot of those outdoor activities that I've grown up doing. I was a journalism major in college. I worked as a journalist for a lot of years to basically get my wife Sue through medical school. And then when she finished up with medical school, we had a couple of our two sons at that point who were babies, and she was and is an emergency room physician. So she's working nights, weekends, holidays, the whole thing. And so it made sense for somebody to put a little stability in there. So which is what I got to do. So I got to stay home for a number of years and be an at-home dad to my two sons. During that time, I did some nonfiction writing. And so I had 5 nonfiction books that were published over that time period. The last of the nonfiction books that I wrote won the National Outdoor Book Award. And so I was able to use that as kind of a platform for making the move over to what I'd always dreamed of giving a shot at, which was fiction writing. And so I launched my series, wrote the manuscript of the first book in the series, and then was fortunate to sell it to Torrey House Press, which is a nonprofit environmental social justice publishing house in Salt Lake City, who are just going great guns right now. They and I were both kind of figuring things out 10 years ago when we both got going, them with the publishing house and me with my series. And it's just been this wonderful opportunity over the decade to watch them grow as an organization, and to kind of grow my series along with them. So the series, the National Park Mystery Series, now has 9 books in the series. And as far as timing is concerned, what we've got going on right now is a re-release of the first book in the series as a 10th anniversary edition of that book. And that book is titled Grand Canyon Sacrifice. And so that's the book that is being re-released officially on April 15th. But later this week, we're doing the big celebration at the local bookstore here in Durango, Colorado, Maria's Bookstore. We're going to do a birthday party. The publishers are coming down from Salt Lake City. And we'll have a big party for the book. We're going to have balloons and cake and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the quick kind of thumbnail of my life in Durango and my writing life.
So, what was it like being a stay-at-home dad?
Oh, it's fantastic. I always tell people it's kind of like winning the lottery. I wasn't sure how much I was going to enjoy it. It was because it was unusual. I was in the kids group, the play group and it was me and a bunch of moms, that sort of thing. So it was this would have been 30 years ago now. My sons are right in that, late 20s, 30-year-old range. And so, 3 decades ago, there were fewer of us guys out there doing that than there are
Yeah.
today. And so it was an unusual thing for me to be doing, and it felt a little bit unusual. And yet I settled into it and just had the time of my life. And the result of my having that freedom of not having trying to do a 5-day week job in combination with a spouse who was doing like job all over the place enabled us to really set up our lives where we had many breaks of time where she was off work, I wasn't working, and so we were able to go off and have really fun adventures with our children. And so it just made for magical time, I think, for our sons as well as for me, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And then the result is I enjoyed it so much, in fact, that the series features kind of a dedicated bachelor, Chuck Bender, who at the start of the series is suddenly fallen in love and married a single mom with a couple of young daughters. And so throughout the course of the series, Chuck Bender is getting to be basically learning how to be a stepdad and a father. And so I get to share a lot of what I really enjoyed about being an at-home dad through kind of Chuck's learning curve that he's on throughout the series.
Nice. So I asked my daughter to check in today and let me know things are coming through. She says, looking good so far. So that's good.
Well, good. There we go. All right.
Using the new software. So
that's great. Thanks, Dakota.
Yeah, we don't look too bad. So I was reading on your website, you were talking about some of the stuff you did, but so you were, and I'm going to have to read this off of here. You were a newspaper reporter, a magazine editor, a radio disc jockey, a city councilor, and a coal shoveling fireman on a steam-powered Durango-Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad.
Sure.
So I got to ask, which of those jobs did you enjoy the most, and which one was really challenging?
Yeah, I really enjoyed being a disc jockey.
Yeah.
That's really kind of the seat of the pants. You're just always on the move. And this was way back when I was, a young man. And back then you were kind of running down the hall. You were ripping the telex off of the printer that was printing off the regional news, and you'd run down the hall, bring it back, in the long strip of paper and read this stuff. And so that was just kind of really adrenaline fun for a young person to do, kind of news, spinning the records, plugging in the commercials, reading the commercials. It just, and the radio station I worked at, again, here in my hometown in Durango, the studio was set in the front window on Main Avenue in downtown Durango. And so people would, you're kind of on stage the whole time, not only as a disc jockey sound wise, but people walking by in front of you, kind of waving at you, making faces at you while you're doing your thing. Absolute total fun. And then the second half of the question was what? How one of them that was more challenging?
Yeah, which one was the most challenging, or maybe you didn't like as much?
Well, actually, challenging was literally the summers. I worked my way through college on the railroad, and so you shovel coal, and it's an absolute true challenge shoveling the coal that's required to take the Durango narrow gauge train that people may be familiar with, pretty famous tourist train, 50 miles north. It begins at 6,500 feet in elevation. By the time you get to Silverton, you're at 9,300 feet in elevation. And you shovel that to get the train up and back to Silverton back to Durango. You shovel about 2.5 tons of coal, and you shovel 90% of those pounds of coal on the way to Silverton on your way up, of course, because you're just basically putting the brakes on the way down. And so you basically are shoveling nonstop. And you have to do it just right to keep the steam pressure high enough so that the engine doesn't stall out on some of the steeper climbs. So an absolute challenge, absolute hard work, and one of the places I really learned the value of a day's work. There's value in a day's work, that you sit down, you put in your time, whether you're shoveling coal or shoveling words into your computer. In either case, it's a job. It's something you're doing. And it was an absolutely rewarding thing, but also very challenging.
My back hurts just thinking about it.
Yeah. Although, like I said, I did it from about age 18 to about age 22 or 23.
Yeah, that's a young man's job, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So was there more than one person shoveling, or were you the only one shoveling?
No, it's just you and the engineer,
And
and
the engineer's telling you when to, okay, I need more, slow
yeah.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they'll look over at you. You'll get about halfway up some of these hills, and they're watching the pressure gauge, and the pressure
Yeah.
gauge will start falling off a little bit. And you need to keep it up at 95 psi in order for the engine to have the amount of oomph it needs to pull 10 passenger cars up. There are about 3 real inclines that you're kind of really having to be on top of your game for on between Durango and Silverton, steep spots. And then it'll start falling off at 95, and that engineer will start looking kind of sideways at you like, come on, you better get going. And so then you just work that much harder. And there's ways you can bank the fire. You can save a little bit of powder if you need it, like real powdery coal. And you can slam a shovelful of the powdery coal right into the middle of the firebox and make a blast of heat that'll kind of grab you a couple of pounds when you need it. So you save your little bit over to the side that you need. So there are all these games that you play, and you better have them in your back pocket ready to go, or literally there have been firemen who failed to keep the engine, adequately steamed or adequately fired, and the engine basically had to stop middle of the hill, back all the way back down, take another run at it, and then you're getting the folks, into town for their lunch in Silverton a half an hour late. So you don't want that to be happening.
So what percent grade is that going up there? Is that?
The most any railroad can really do is under 3%, because you've got steel on steel wheels on steel track. And so there's not a lot of traction. You do have sand, so the engineer can drop sand from the sand bell that's on the top of it. If you picture that bell-shaped piece of equipment on the top of a steam engine, that's filled with sifted sand, real fine sand. And so they can spray that on the wheels to try to give a little traction between the steel wheels and the steel rails. But even so, there's nothing over. My understanding is 3% that any railroad can go up. But those three inclines, I'm sure, are pushing right at 3%.
So that's a beautiful part of the country. You get to really enjoy looking at the scenery while you're working, I'm sure.
No, yeah, the engineer does, but the fireman doesn't really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that sounds like hard work. So what was it like being a city councilman?
And that was hard work too. You talk about challenging. That was, again, one of the situations where I really learned how to have thick skin. I'll have to say.
Sure.
It is something that you have to really find confidence in yourself is what I think of when I think of being a city councilor, because you're making these tough decisions. I always remind folks that most of the decisions that are being made in a city government are being made by city staff. They're taking care of all the day in and day out decisions. The decisions that come to city council are the tough decisions, the ones that there is not a clear answer to. And so, by definition, pretty much everything you're doing has pros and cons to it. And you're having to sit there and weigh the pros and cons. You've got a lot more information than the citizens do about the various issues that you're debating and voting on, because you're being, given this information and studying up on it on the citizens' behalf. And so you'll make decisions that are for the best for the citizenry, but the citizens may be really upset about it because they don't know the backstory. They don't know everything that's going on. And so that's where that the need for thick skin comes in. And I remember used to opening up the local newspaper and kind of looking at the letters to the editor to see who was going to rip the one that day. But on the other hand, truly satisfying, because you're kind of behind, you're backstage getting to know all these things that are going on and feeling good about the value that you're bringing to your community.
So you learn there about reading reviews on your books, right?
It's the exact same thing. And honestly, it really helped. It really helped because you see those 1-star reviews and you're like, all right, hey, I'm doing the best I can here. I respect your opinion and I'm proud of what I'm doing at the same time.
Well, the ones that are interesting sometimes you get, and I've had a few like that where you see the review and you go, it doesn't even seem like you read the book. I mean, I had one who gave me a 1-star review. It was a verified purchase too. And it said Christian author. And I'm like, huh? My books are hardly Christian books. They're these
Uh,
hard-boiled private eye, gritty
sure.
crime books, and I'm like, okay, did he post it on the wrong thing? But it said verified purchase, so I guess at least I got the money out of them, right? So,
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Well, the ninth book in my series, the one that just came out this last year, is Death Valley Duel, and it features an ultra trail running marathon across the Mojave Desert to Death Valley from Mount
ooh,
Whitney, 150 miles through the desert, and of course, bad things happen along the way in the aid stations for the race and whatnot. It's like a 48-hour long race, very intense. I had one of the events for the release of the book with one of these ultra trail running racers, one of the top woman racers on the planet, and she talked about how phenomenal the book was in terms of capturing the reality of what ultra trail running is like. And the reason I was able to capture the reality of it is because I have a son. My wife and I have one of our kids now is one of those ultra racers himself, and we served as his crew for a couple of these races where you're following along. And so I was able then to share that, the reality of that intensity in the book. And she joked because she had, before she was at this event with me, she read some of the reviews on Amazon, and she read one of the 1-star reviews, which was, there's no way anything like this could be real. This is just insane. This is ridiculous. 1 star. And she said it is the most real depiction she'd ever read of what ultra trail running is really like. So there you go. There's your 1-star review that you just kind of have to take and then just sit with and then sit aside.
and it's like you almost sometimes want to answer them back, and I know they say you should never answer people back like that, but Goodreads you can actually respond. You used
Yeah.
to be able to comment on Amazon, but they took that away. I don't know how many
Mm-hmm.
years ago. And be one of those that's like, well, are you an ultra runner yourself? Do you know
Right.
this for a fact, or are you just have it in your head?
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. The temptation is always there, but so far, I've always avoided the temptation.
All right. So, how long have you been writing, and who are some of the authors that motivated you to write? I mean, who'd you like to read when you were younger? I mean, I'm assuming you've been reading since you could.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. I was raised by uh, one of my parents. My mother was an English professor, and so I was kind of raised around books. She and actually my wife Sue are both kind of they like the big, heavy nonfiction type books. I've always been drawn to the quick, fun reads that are also books that you're going to learn from. And so, I was always a thriller reader and a Western reader, and loved Louis L'Amour when I was a kid, just because he wrote here in Durango.
Sure.
He had a room at the Strater Hotel that he would write his books at, and have a typewriter on either side of room 222, up above the honky tonk piano in the bar below him, that would make him feel like he was in the old west. And he would write those books, just pump out, go back and forth from one book to the other. And I whipped through those as a kid, and then got into mystery reading. And so all along while I was doing my nonfiction writing, I always read Tony Hillerman, and I thought, okay, Tony Hillerman just really, he did what I wanted to do, which was, not only did he tell a wonderful mystery, but he let folks see into this world that you otherwise didn't get to see. And so he let people see the Navajo people that he knew well, the Navajo nation, and the way the Navajo culture works. They were willing to let him into the culture, and then he was able to share that with a greater audience. And so not only did you get to read these really great, just pure entertaining murder mysteries, but you learned a great deal about not only the Navajo people and Navajo culture, but just the American West in general, because he was out here in the West, journalism professor at UNM in Albuquerque, University of New Mexico. And so he knew his place. He gave you these wonderful settings, and then he filled them with these wonderful characters who were very real. And so I loved that. And that was really, I think Tony was the person that really got me to thinking, this is what I want to do, and I hope I can do it, maybe even partly as well as Tony Hillerman. And so honestly, when my first book contract came through for my first nonfiction book, Sue and I had just moved to Albuquerque because she had started medical school there in New Mexico. And I had this contract, and the only author I knew who lived in New Mexico was Tony Hillman. And so back then, you just flipped through the white pages, looked up people's phone numbers. And so I flipped through the white pages. I found his number in the white pages, and I called him up. And his wife answered, and she put Tony on the phone, and he had the most wonderful conversation with me about kind of not really a bunch about what to look for in a book contract, but just the most warm, wonderful kind of go get him tiger sort of talk with me about what it was like to be an author and what it was like to have a book contract and to fulfill that contract. And so it was this wonderful moment for me as a young author getting my first book contract to actually, kind of touch bases with this man whose work I'd respected for so long. And it was literally 25, 30 years later that I was finally able to take all that nonfiction that I've been working on, flip it to the fiction, and start writing these mysteries that in many ways are similar to and have been compared to the type, not quality, I'm not going to go there, but the type of work that Tony Hillman does in terms of, and did, and that his daughter Anne now is doing wonderfully with the series. She has continued his series. And it's exactly what I've tried to do with these mysteries is share with people the park, the setting of the park, and then either an environmental or a social justice issue that is really important and that is occurring right now in those parks. A lot of historical, a lot of educational pieces mixed into what I hope are a fun and entertaining plot line so that folks not only have a fun mystery about the national parks set in the national parks, but they're learning something along the way as well.
Yeah, it's great. Authors can be very, you would think someone as well known as him would be very standoffish and not want to talk to you. But as many people have said through the years, it seems like most authors are always willing to talk and lend a hand and do that, which obviously that inspired you, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And it was amazing to me when I then was able to get the first mystery published and was in the process of working on how to promote it and doing all the stuff with a brand new, publishing house. We were all new to the game, trying to figure this out as we went. I sent out some cold letters. I worked hard on the letters and I sent them to people whose work I really, really respected. But I ended up as a result with some wonderful quotes from some of the big name authors over the years who have read my work, who have enjoyed my work, and who have offered me wonderful, wonderful blurbs as a result. And these are folks who are really busy people. And so for them to have taken that sort of time for me, people like William Kent Kruger and C.J. Box and Craig Johnson, these people, and Hillerman, and now most recently the new book, the re-release, Grand Canyon Sacrifice, Anne Hillerman, if people can see on there, it has written the foreword for the re-release of Grand Canyon Sacrifice. I've become friends and acquaintances with her over the course of the 10 years, and she's equally as wonderful a human being as her father. And here he was helpful to me so many years ago, and now she's being wonderful and helpful to me by having written this foreword for my first book on its 10th anniversary release this week. So it's been just an amazing journey. And I think if you see what these people do and have respect for these other authors, it's a wonderful opportunity then for you as an author to simply hope to get somewhere close to the kind of level of quality that these folks produce year in and year out.
Yeah, we all want to.
We do, don't we?
Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. As I've often told people, it's like, do it because you love it. Don't necessarily do it because you make a lot of money at it. If you're lucky enough you make money at it, then that's great. But it's always nice when people say nice things about your books. So that's
absolutely, it really is. It really is.
And then you get those 1-star reviews, and you go, okay,
that's right.
We've all got them.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So what was the first thing you wrote then? You said you did a lot of nonfiction at first. So, or did you do some writing when you were in school or high school where you kind of were, poetry or anything like that? But
no, I was always journalism. So I have every time I go to a poetry reading, I'm just blown away. I just love watching poets read their work. but I can't even really read. I can't even do a good job of reading poetry on a page, much less try to write it myself. So I have great respect for poets, but I definitely am not one. I was always drawn to journalism, loved just that telling that story straight ahead, and was able to parlay the experience that I had by the time I was in my mid-20s. By then I started writing for the local newspaper in Durango when I was 15 or 16, writing sports. And then I wrote the college paper. I wrote for the local paper in Fort Collins, Colorado, where I went to college. Wrote for magazines after that. And so I just had written journalistically straight through until I put out my first book proposal. And so basically, I just kind of moved my journalism into nonfiction pretty smoothly in terms of how it worked for me mentally. I was able to just basically break these books into chapters that were kind of article length chapters, and wrote how-to books, where-to books based on some of the traveling that my wife and Sue and I did when we were younger folk, kind of backpacking around the world and camping and climbing mountains around the world before we started the family and did kind of the next step of our lives. And so the first book I wrote was called Backpacking and Camping in the Developing World. And it was essentially a how-to guide to the folks who were not just kind of going around from hostel to hostel and what restaurants to eat at in say Kathmandu, but how to trek when you get to Nepal, and how to do the backcountry things in the Andes Mountains, for example, how to get off the beaten path in Africa, were all places that Sue and I traveled, and then shared that in that book. So that was the first book I wrote, kind of how to, and then kind of stayed in that vein. Ended up doing a soccer coaching book with a soccer coaching expert for McGraw-Hill that still sells really well. And honestly, talking about starred reviews, it's the highest starred reviewed book I've ever had. And just kind of a great how-to book about coaching young people, young kids, soccer. At the time, there was this explosion of young kids playing soccer, but all the books that were out there on how to coach were teaching kids how to coach soccer that were older. And so there was a niche that needed to be filled there, and we filled it with this book that's done still sells well. And it's all about the different ways it takes to be a coach to kids that are like 4 to 6 to 7 years old, when they're just kind of wanting to run around in that big, swarm on the field sort of thing. And so those are the sorts of books I wrote for nonfiction, was writing what I knew, and also kind of how-to type of books. And then the one that won the National Outdoor Book Award was called Extreme Kids. And it was when our children were getting a little older, and it was a book about basically how to get your kids involved in what on the surface seem like extreme sports, like rock climbing or kayaking or and honestly just hiking and backpacking, but doing it in a way that's safe and fun for the kids, and as a way of trying to basically wean kids away from screen time, because the screens at that time were really just starting to suck into the kids' brains. And so that's the book then, because it was talking about a lot of those issues that won that National Outdoor Book Award, that then enabled me to use that as a platform to feel like, okay, I'm ready. At the same time, my kids were getting old enough, they didn't want me around so much anymore. And so I basically had the time. I'd kind of put in my years as an at-home dad, and now it was like, no, at-home dad, we don't want you around anymore. And so I had the opportunity to really sink my teeth into fiction. And so that's what I turned to doing with the National Park Mystery Series.
So, do you find writing therapeutic?
I do. Yeah. It is, as you know, it's tough. It's like anything. It's tough. But anything that's also what's therapeutic about it. It makes your brain work. It's wonderful, wonderful therapy for the brain. And again, it's kind of like, the analogy we were talking about earlier, the shoveling coal. You're accomplishing something. You're putting words on a page. You are telling a story. And in my case, I'm telling stories that I believe in, and that I believe are going to have value to my readers in terms of what I hope they're going to learn from them and take from those stories. And so I feel like I'm doing good work, if you put it that way. And when I think about it that way, despite how challenging writing in general is, and to me, writing fiction is just kind of a whole level more difficult for me. Still, the therapeutic side of it absolutely wins out.
Yeah, it is very good. So tell us. So you've got this national park series. So
Right.
where did it all start? What was the first book?
Well, so where it started was I had
Is the one you're
been writing
re-releasing?
nonfiction. What's that?
The one you're re-releasing is
Yeah,
really
so this
was the
it
first one,
started with
right?
Grand Canyon Sacrifice,
Yeah.
and basically where it started was if people have visited the Grand Canyon, many, millions and millions of people. There's one book in the Grand Canyon that has been the best-selling book in the visitor center at the Grand Canyon now for these many years, 20, 25 years. And it's called Death in the Grand Canyon. And this book was written by two and independently published by two guys who essentially took all of the official reports of the deaths that had occurred in the Grand Canyon that were just the publicly available written up reports of all the deaths that had occurred in the Grand Canyon, and they divided the chapters up by type of death. So you had heat stroke, drowning in the river on rafting trips, of course, lots of cliff falls,
Yeah,
um,
fine. Yeah.
car wrecks, and so they basically turned those reports into narrative descriptions and put this book out. And it's been the bestseller ever since. Why? Because people are fascinated with death. That's, of course, why the mystery genre, year in and year out, is one of the top selling genres on the planet, is because it's the ultimate question: murder, life and death. And so I basically thought, all right, if this is the idea of death in the Grand Canyon, um, the Grand Canyon is the most visited national park out here in the West, most iconic park, a park that I knew very well. And I thought, all right, if I want to do a mystery series, I want it to be one that is what I know, which are the parks, and that's going to have an opportunity to sell and to be marketable. And of course, with millions of people visiting the national parks, and with Nevada Bar having already done a wonderful series of the Anna Pigeon mysteries of a ranger moving from park to park, she proved the value for readers in wanting to read about the parks, because she had already had a ranger as her protagonist. I went with an archaeologist to switch things up. So Chuck Bender is an archaeologist. Here in Durango, we're close to Mesa Verde National Park. And Mesa Verde National Park, folks probably know, is where the cliff dwellers built their wonderful, wonderful cities under the cliffs and villages. And archaeology is kind of a real part of what Durango is about. So I'm familiar with archaeology, just personally, from having been raised here in Durango. The college here in town, Fort Lewis College, is one of the leading archaeological research colleges in America. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to do a ranger. I'll take and have this archaeologist who does contract work. And then I'll be able to share with people an archaeological story that is a through line for each of these books, as well as, like I said before, some piece of information about the park that is happening at either at the time or has been a part of the park's history that I can share with people as well. And so I took all those pieces together and put together the first book, Grand Canyon Sacrifice, and then began looking to sell that book and to sell the series, because I had in mind all the time this was going to be a series.
And so did you interview some archaeologists? Did you know some archaeologists that kind of gave you some feedback on what they do research wise?
Yeah, in fact, what I did was I took the college level course that the state of Colorado's archaeology office puts on around the state on a rotating basis. Essentially, when development occurs, developers are required to do an archaeological survey of the site, that if it has been undisturbed in the past, before they're able to dig into it and build their structure. In the case of the state government, you've got a lot of highways that are going in. We've got highway widening projects or straightening projects. And so they're cutting through places that are undisturbed. Late law says you have to do an archaeological survey and dig of sites, if necessary, on those lands before they can then be developed, bulldozed, essentially, to put in, say, a new highway. The state of Colorado doesn't really have adequate funding to pay for all archaeologists to do that work. And instead, they will allow volunteers to come help the paid archaeologists who are on these sites doing this work. But those volunteers have to be certified. And so this is the class you take to get certified as a volunteer archaeologist to work on these digs. And that's the class I took. So it's a college level course that was wonderful because it gave me much more insight than I thought I knew. I had been a chaperone for both my sons' trips that all the Durango elementary school children do in fourth grade. They go to what's called the Crow Canyon Archaeological Center. That's about an hour's drive away from Durango, near Mesa Verde National Park. Do a little overnight trip there. They do their own play, shouldn't say play, but a practice dig set up in a sandbox environment. They get to learn all about archaeology on the site. So I chaperoned for both of those. I thought, I was a chaperone for the school kids. I know what I'm doing. And then took this course and learned a heck of a lot more. And so that's the learning plus talking to archaeologists that I have applied to the book since.
So I got a little behind. I had a couple of comments here.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Alan Rigg, Alan, and then she was talking about the marathon stuff.
Oh, that's great. So Alan says that you've got a daughter in Leadville. Yep. So you know what I'm talking about, Alan. That these they're crazy. I mean, these races are crazy. And I don't know if your daughter has actually run in one before, but to watch it unfold was one of the more now twice to be in close and personal as a part of the crew for my son in these races. Just a remarkable experience, just purely vicariously watching what these runners put themselves through. And in fact, it was the middle of the night on the Rabbit Ears race. It's called Run Rabbit Run, which is the races up in Steamboat Springs. My son was running in that race several years ago, and the middle of the night aid station, you're at about mile 75 of this 100-mile race. It's about 2 a.m. It had been raining and snowing and sleeting and hailing through the night. And you had to drive about 8 miles up into the mountains, up this muddy road. You could barely get up there to where the aid station was and wait for your runner to come in. And you would have like extra socks for them, some energy bars. You have warm, dry clothes for them if they were needing them. And you're kind of waiting for them to come in. In the meantime, these other runners are coming into the aid station, and they're just beat. I mean, they've been hailed on, they've been snowed on, they can barely move, and they wander into the aid station, the little covered tent area, and they're dishing up quesadillas for them and hot food for them as fast as they can get hot food to these people. And it's just kind of chaos. I mean, the rain they're trying to figure out what the times are for the various runners, checking their bibs. People are trying to put shoes on and off in the middle of the rain. It's just a big mess. And that was actually when it occurred to me, in the middle of this chaos was a perfect place that I could kill a bunch of people, right? Because you think about it, you've got this, it's like a perfect place for a murderer or a villain to do their work, correct? Because it's, no one's going to notice. I mean, these runners are almost dead anyway, right? And so you could just kind of take a feather and knock them off. And so that's basically what I did. I had fun with that idea. It kind of ran in my brain for a couple of years, and then I took that idea, and that's what became Death Valley Duel, the ultra running race, where we've got, in this case, it's the desert, not the mountains. So we got rattlesnakes that have been set up by the villain to do some bad things. And I'm not giving anything away there because that's the preface. And we've got, the possibility of poison in the aid stations, and that all of the, the nefarious things that you can think of that might occur during one of these races.
It's amazing how us authors' minds work, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Like I always say, don't look at a mystery author's search history or they'll end up in prison.
That's right. That's definitely a strong possibility.
Yeah.
So you've had 9 books.
Right.
So can you name all the national parks that you've used in all your books?
More or less. Let's see if I can do it. So the way we did, and I say we because this was a teamwork approach with Torrey House Press. I found them, like I said, as they were getting going, and I was getting going with my series, and we've kind of grown the series together as they've grown the publishing house. We thought, okay, we're going to do the first 4 books as the 4 most visited national parks out in the West, to give ourselves the best odds that we're going to have the highest potential readership out there. So we did Grand Canyon, We did Rocky Mountain National Park second, which is Mountain Rampage. We did Yellowstone next, which is Yellowstone Standoff. And then we did Yosemite as the fourth book, which was Yosemite Fall over the first 4 years. And then by then the series was pretty well established. It was doing pretty well. And so I had the opportunity to do some of the parks that are near and dear to me and a little bit closer to home, and ones that I feel really strongly about in terms of some of the stories that I tell. And so we did Arch's Enemy. We did Canyonlands Carnage, which, if people are familiar with whitewater rafting, carnage is when the rafts flip over in the river and all the equipment goes flying everywhere. That's called whitewater carnage. So Canyonlands Carnage is a river rafting trip down Cataract Canyon, the Colorado River, in the heart of Canyonlands National Park, something I've done a lot of rafting. And so I was able to share river rafting with people. And then Mesa Verde Victim, which is what I think of as my hometown book here in Durango. And Mesa Verde, I get to tell the story of the Native American Graves Repatriation Act, which is this wonderful act by Congress that has led to the return of skeletal remains that have been stored and were taken from grave sites around the world, around North America in the 1800s and early 1900s, squirreled away in museums everywhere. And this act has enabled the repatriation of these remains to come back and be reburied. And so I tell that story through Mesa Verde Victim and the mystery that's occurring in Mesa Verde Victim. And then from there it was Saguaro Sanction, Saguaro National Park in Tucson, Arizona. And then last year's Death Valley Duel, which is the ultra trail running race that I was just talking about. So I think I got all 9 right there.
It's almost as if you wrote the books, huh? Good job. I didn't have them all listed in front of me, so I couldn't double check it. You should be the one that knows. So
yes.
So the most recent, you got the re-release, but the last book that was a new book that came out,
right?
That one was
the ultra trail running book, Death Valley Duel.
Death Valley Duel. So that's the one. That's the latest one.
Yep.
So I'm assuming you're working on a new one.
Yep, got a 2-book contract going with Torrey House Press right now. Okay. And I am just finishing the first draft of Great Sand Dunes Massacre. And that will be coming out next year. So I've kind of bought myself a little bit of a breather. Well, I shouldn't say I did. My publisher did, by coming out with the re-release this year of Grand Canyon Sacrifice. Right. And so I kind of did nine books in 9 years. I've got a little breather here with this 10th anniversary edition of the first book. Slowed down a little bit and had fun with Great Sand Dunes Massacre. And then we're finally going to do the last park out here in the West that has great visitorship that we haven't gotten to yet, which is Zion National Park. And I'll be honest with you, to people listening, Zion, one of the reasons I haven't gotten to it yet is because it's been really enjoyable to come up with alliterative titles for the books. So Canyonlands Carnage, Mesa Verde Victim, Death Valley Duel. It's really hard to come up with a Z alliterative word. And so we've been kind of playing with different things. We'll see. It's probably not going to be a Z, but if anyone listening out there has any ideas for me on what would make a nice alliterative Zion title, I'm all ears.
Something that rhymes with Zion, maybe, huh?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. People keep saying Diane and Zion.
Diane and Zion. Yeah, that kind of crossed my mind too. So
That's right. Yeah, we'll see.
A little tongue twister for people too, right?
Precisely. Yep.
So I always ask authors, are you a pantster or a plotter?
I have tried both because, again, this has been a learning curve for me, this process. And I began as a pantser, tried plotting for a couple of books, didn't enjoy it, and have gone back to being primarily a seat of the pants author and writer. And I just find that when I am letting the story unfold for myself, I feel like it's much fresher for the reader as well. When I can just kind of turn the characters loose, and I haven't got my 3x5 cards either, physically in front of me or on the computer screen, as they've got these software packages that'll do that sort of thing for you, that kind of enable you to outline your story. I find that without that, the characters will kind of take more of a life of their own take on a more of a life of their own, and I'll be able to kind of follow them in these tangential directions. The result, of course, is that I end up leaving a lot more work on the cutting room floor, because they'll take off in various directions. I'll have fun going there, but it won't necessarily be what was necessary for the plot. But the result of what ends up on the cutting room floor, I have found, I think gives a much richer and more alive tale for the reader. It certainly does for me. And so that's what I've ended up doing, is really embracing the fact that it's a slower process, a more labor intensive process. Every author I know who's doing, say, 2 series, there are many authors out there who are popping out a couple of series, one every 6 months. And there, for the most part, you have to be an outliner almost to do that, unless you're just brilliant. And those are folks who are out there more brilliant than me. In my case, 1 a year, I can relax enough to where I can just really enjoy and let that process unfold before me. And it's just fun. Like we were saying, it's therapeutic. To see this story just kind of open up before your eyes is something that is one of the most enjoyable parts of what I've gotten to do these last 10 years.
So are those characters in the room with you when you're writing?
More or less, yes. It's been fun. I think I've learned to let them be in the room more with me. It used to frighten me a little bit, because I think I come from that journalism world and I come from the nonfiction world. And so this idea that I could let these characters be real in my mind was a bit of a kind of, I wouldn't say frightened me, but it wasn't something that I was comfortable with. And really, over the years, I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it. And what's funny is, like you said, having been an at-home dad for a number of years, it's been the 2 daughters, Rosie and Carmelita. Carmelita is the older daughter. Rosie's the younger daughter. And they start out at the beginning of the series at ages 6 and 8. And throughout the series, the family are growing a year older with each book in the series. So as the year goes by and the book's released, the family is a year older. So in the case of the girls, of course, they're really growing up. And so at the time of Death Valley Duel, they're now 17 and 15 years old. And so they've kind of grown through their adolescence into their teen years. And through that process of my writing them, they have become very real to me. And it's been a real joy and a pleasure to have that be the case. That they feel like they're there in the room with me. And I'll start trying to have them do something, and they'll be like, no, that's not me. You know, that's not me.
So you have basically virtual daughters. You had sons in real life, but now you have virtual daughters.
And honestly,
I have a daughter, but I've never had a son. It's like, maybe I need to write a son in my books.
There you go. That was exactly the reason I decided to do that, was that I had a great time raising 2 sons, but because I only knew how to raise sons because that's all I had done. It always scared me a little bit to think about, what if we'd had daughters? How would I have done as an at-home dad of daughters? What if I probably wouldn't have done so well? Maybe I'd have messed up. And so in the whole idea of starting a mystery series, you want to basically have as much conflict and as much kind of throwing the kitchen sink at your protagonist as you possibly can. And so it made sense to me in real life that if I was kind of nervous about having been faced with the idea of raising a couple of daughters instead of sons, why not have my protagonist have to do that? And so that was specifically where that idea came from, to have this established bachelor suddenly be faced with 2 daughters. And of course, it gave me an excuse, so that when he would blow it as a stepdad, I could just say, well, I don't know how to raise daughters, So it kind of gave me a little bit of a remove in case I had, I was kind of blowing it on behalf of Chuck in terms of his doing his parental duties incorrectly.
Well, I mean, we're all trying to figure it out along the way, right? I mean, none of us
Absolutely.
are experts at it when we have kids.
That's some of what I hope readers get from the book, is that Chuck and Janelle, she's younger. She's an at-home mom. She's basically just devoted herself to these daughters. And she too is learning. She's getting to be for the first time, kind of an adult in the adult world outside of just her daughters throughout the 10 years that she's growing up in the series as well. And so in the same vein, she's kind of learning and feeling her way into the world too. And so she's become very real in that respect in my mind too.
So are you a disciplined writer? Do you write every day?
I am. And it goes back to that shoveling coal. Yeah.
On the back.
I get up, have my coffee, spend too much time looking at the internet, but then sit down and essentially 8 to noon or so every morning, try to do it about 5 days a week. Especially when I'm running, doing that first draft, because the first draft, people who are out there who are writers as well know that just pushing that first draft out, you basically just have to do it. And so I require of myself X number of words. I've tried different numbers. Now that I've gotten to slow down a little bit with this book because I had a little extra time, I've quote only required myself 1,000 words a day to be pushing out this first draft of the Great Sand Dunes book. I've gone as far as to try pushing as like 2,500 words a day, which many authors do without any problem at all. But 2,500 words a day, I tried doing a book really quick and hard about the third or fourth book in, and to see how that would come out as a first draft. And I worked 7 days a week, 2,500 words a day. And it just, after about 10 or 12 weeks, it just about killed me. I had a first draft, but it took me a month to recover. My brain was mush. And so I've titrated that. I've found the level that works for me. Generally about 1,500 words a day is a nice number, but I have a word count, to come back to what you were saying. It is it's a job. I treat it as a profession. And I know that the folks at Torrey House Press who are working really hard at their end. These are 4 people running a nonprofit press that is now publishing some young indigenous, some Navajo authors. Are doing this wonderful kind of social justice work out there in the world. They're also publishing some of the top environmental nonfiction authors in America today: Craig Childs, Pam Houston, David Gessner, doing really amazing things. And these people are depending on me. I mean, they've got a slot in their schedule where my manuscript is going to show up, where my book is going to be released. And I owe it to them, and I feel to my readers, to do the best I can and to meet my obligations on their behalf. And so that's what drives me to get up every day and put in my therapeutic work.
So I just wanted to say hi to Lanessa. She's an author friend of ours, and she had a little allergy reaction to something. She's in the hospital right now, so she's recovering. But hi, Lanessa. Hope you're feeling better.
Glad you got. I hope you are too. Ooh. And I hope it wasn't a murder mystery. Well, of course, there may be a story. Assuming you get well and everything's good, maybe there's. If you're a mystery author as well, there could be something there.
She is a suspense mystery, a little bit of romance in her books. So
there you go. Yeah, anything bad is always good for us mystery authors.
You've heard to happen to have someone else other than yourself, but
that's true. Yeah, you don't need to be up that close. Yeah,
Jimmy Stewart, Rear Window, right? You're in the wheelchair and you see something, and Hitchcockian. So maybe in the hospital, right? Something
right. That's
will
right.
come to her. So
that's exactly right.
So is there a book that you want to write that you haven't written yet? Something different?
I've been offered that opportunity by Torrey House Press and by other publishers. And, so far I'm having so much fun with my family and with what I'm doing. I keep waiting for that to happen. I love thrillers. And so I'm literally I've kind of been casting around looking for a thriller idea. I know it would be an outdoors oriented thriller. I know it would be out here in the West. So it would still be somewhat similar, I think, to the world that I've created and the world that I'm comfortable in. But haven't come across it yet. And when I do, I'm going to jump on it. But in the meantime, I am having so much fun doing my mysteries, and they've been so satisfying to me, and have filled me with such satisfaction and pleasure that I have not so far, found that other book that I just have to go off and write. It may well be out there. We'll see.
Well, you're a young man. You got plenty of time, right?
We got plenty of time, haven't we? Yeah. That's the nice thing about what we're doing. I'm not shoveling coal anymore, so I can keep doing this for a while.
No, but after a while, you get a little arthritis in the fingers, right?
Yeah. And the lower back, folks out there know, the lower back starts giving you some trouble too.
Yes, and Lanessa, she said, you can't find a mystery and conspiracy in daily life, you're not looking hard enough.
That's exactly it. It's always there.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff in the news these days. So not good. So You were on this panel where we're talking with a lot of other authors who have done national park type books. Great panel, and it was really interesting. You were talking about some of the changes, privatizing of national parks and things like that. And I think I even commented, it's like I have visions of corporate America, building townhomes and condos on these national parks because it's all about the profit
Right.
instead. And so I'm sure you have strong thoughts on all of this, trying to preserve these national parks. Because I mean, Teddy Roosevelt, I believe, is the one who came up with the national park system, and I'd hate to see it destroyed, and I'm sure you would as well.
Absolutely, and I think that the comment that I made during that panel still holds, which is that we're at a real dangerous time in our nation's history right now, where there are these really strong privatization efforts that are underway, and it's not necessarily political as much as it is kind of greed based, power based, money based. It's not necessarily a political thing, except that the political winds have set up such that wealth and privilege are being able to threaten what is our kind of public. I won't say birthright because it's something that we as a public have worked hard to preserve and maintain in these parks. And we've got tremendous wealth. There are a number of books that are out there talking about the subject in more serious ways than my mysteries attempt to address it. Billionaire Wilderness is the one that comes to mind, that's talking about the way vast landscapes are being locked up by the billionaires of America that are not unlike some of the oligarch sorts of folks who have just wealth that's beyond our sorts of imagining. And when that wealth starts being able to focus in on our public lands and our parks, we've got some real concerns out there that we do need to address. And so one of the ways we're doing it in a very small way is those of us who are on the panel we're looking at starting a little Substack. And if it grows, it grows. But in the meantime, it'll be an opportunity for us to write more seriously about some of these issues that we see out there, in combination with our books that are entertaining and that are fun and that are educational, but aren't necessarily as serious as some of the stuff we're looking at writing in this Substack. And we're going to invite guest authors from the park system and from various aspects of this issue to join us in that Substack, to begin just talking about that issue, because so much of it is basically bringing light to these issues. And then honestly, the Zion book, the idea that I've got for the Zion book, which I'll be starting to write here in just a few weeks when I finish up the one I'm on now. The whole idea is exactly what you're talking about, Randy, which is, what if an oligarch comes into the bottom of Zion Canyon, and if people have been in Zion Canyon, they know the beautiful lodge that's down there. And there's that beautiful little bit of green grass in the middle of the Red Rock country with cottonwood trees. And it's just the most beautiful little spot. And what if one of the oligarchs comes in, puts in his helipad, and basically gets that carved off as a favor from somebody or other, and so the public is now fenced out of the most beautiful part of Zion Canyon, which is not all that far fetched based on some of the proposals that we're seeing out there right now. And so that's really what I'm going to be like addressing with that Zion book, is this whole idea, again, in an entertaining fiction sort of way, but looking at what are these real concerns we've got out there. I mean, the current administration is openly saying the goal is to privatize as much of government as they possibly can. And there are times when privatization is good. So I'm not, but in terms of our public lands and our public parks, privatizing those means that the great masses suddenly are going to be going to just by definition going to get less and less access to them. And we've seen it in small ways. The national forests that are home to ski areas, you basically pay to ski at the ski areas, but many of the ski areas now are offering, for big money, people can cut the line at the ski areas. And that's been something that's been offered at Disneyland forever. You can pay more money and cut the line in front of the people that pay less money. Fine for Disneyland to do it. But when you're doing it on our national forest lands, it becomes a different question. And that's the sort of thing that concerns many of us out there these days with regard to the national parks.
Yeah, I've got to.
There it is.
Your parks pass here.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
hope I'm going to be able to take advantage of it going forward.
Right.
Hopefully they're going to still accept that if they decide to privatize some of these, because
Yeah,
I was able to get that for a really good price, and I can go into pretty much any national park these days.
exactly. And the
Uh,
problem, of course, is they're so popular and they're so crowded that you could charge a premium to people who have the means to do it, and you could make a lot more money off of that landscape by letting the rich have the playground for themselves, and that's the concern.
yeah, I liken that to toll roads too. I've talked about that several times. If you're wealthy enough to pay, you can go faster on a toll road and miss the traffic. Which
Right.
again, the rich are wealthy. So yes, Linesso, a couple other
Exactly.
comments. Yeah,
That's
and then
what you do. Follow money.
yeah,
Yeah.
she also was, you know, they shouldn't be for sale to anyone. And they really shouldn't. It's got to preserve.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate seeing that, and that's what I've been writing about, and that's what I plan to continue to write about.
All right, so we're getting about an hour here, but awards you've won. Have you got any big awards you've won with any of your books?
The Candyland's Carnage mystery was up for the Colorado Book Award. It was a finalist for that award, and
Mhm.
then the award that I'm still seriously riding along on is that National Outdoor Book Award that I won with my last nonfiction book. But other than that, nope. I'm just writing my mysteries, enjoying them. They're not necessarily mysteries that are designed to be turned into, say, movies and TV shows, because they're family oriented, which doesn't necessarily lend themselves to the visual medium. They're also set in the national parks where they use these iconic landscapes that would be difficult to capture. And so that I've known that all along. So the books are really their own world, their own place. And again, my publisher is a smaller nonprofit publisher, so I'm not availed of the big New York publishers that may be able to do more marketing than I and my publisher are capable of. But they've sold really well in the world that they're in. They've been a wonderful success for the publishing house. They help keep the publishing house rolling along. So it's been a wonderful experience for me, and so that honestly, that's been the wonderful award that I've had these last 10 years, is that to be a part of Torrey House Press, and a part of everything that we've been doing together. And I would encourage people to check out Torrey House Press. You can go to torreyhouse.org, and it's TORREY house.org. They really are an amazing publishing house, working their tails off, doing amazing work. Just for folks, as I said earlier, who are really giving their all to. And again, it's a public lands preservation based publishing house that is aimed at preserving the cultures and preserving the public lands. The books they have out, they're doing now 8 to 10 books a year, and just incredible books they're coming out with. So I would encourage folks to check them out. I couldn't be more proud of them. I'm so proud to be a part of them, and that's been honestly the award that has been wonderful for me all these years.
Yeah, I mean it's great you get that kind of support, because a lot of the publishing houses these days are struggling, and then I've had authors I've had on here I've interviewed, and they uh, they talk about they don't really help much with the marketing anymore, and you've got to
Right?
kind of do a lot of that, and pretty much put it out there. They take their cut, and that's about it. Sounds like you've got a good situation there with your
Yeah,
publishing.
they're amazing, and they put their efforts into marketing. One of those four employees is full time marketing. That she is all marketing and publicity. So they've got their priorities straight, which is really great.
Yeah, Lanessa say you ought to consider putting in for the Silver Falchion Award. Lanessa was a big winner one
Oh,
year.
congratulations! Oh,
She
that's
won
great.
and I've
Yep.
won a couple of Silver Falchion Awards as well. So
And is
that
that
was
the
won
one,
by Clay
Vanessa?
Stafford in Nashville.
Nashville. That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
It's a funny it's more of a learning conference. Left
Okay.
Coast Crime was more of a fan conference.
Right.
Killer Nashville was more of a learning conference. BoucherCon's more kind of a little bit of a learning, but it's more of a fan.
Right.
Yeah, the deadline for this year is tomorrow, so you
Oh
have to put
man.
it in pretty quick. But
Ooh.
yeah,
So
they
you can
have
self you can self submit. You can self submit for that. I did not know that.
yeah, there's a cost, but
Okay.
almost all of them charge you anymore. I mean,
Right.
most of the awards are. I mean, they have like the Lefty Awards and things like that, where that's a voting thing, so
Sure.
more of a popularity. But yes, it is. I think it's like $89 or whatever it is. But
Oh, okay.
I
Oh,
think,
good. I'm
and they
glad.
have multiple categories as well. Whereas like the Lefties pretty much was like mystery, and then more straight mystery where it could be just about everybody. Whereas here they break it down into categories, mystery, thriller, mystery, suspense. They have, I think, romantic suspense. I mean, he has a lot of categories. Humor,
Okay.
yeah. So, but Clay Stafford runs that, and it's a great event. I've gone the last 4 years, and I'll be going again this year.
Oh, great.
Nashville in August, though it's a little hot and
Yeah.
humid. For us Coloradoans, we're like, we die out there. Last year was over 100 degrees. We were out there for
Man.
2 weeks.
Find
And
the air
I
conditioning.
was also there, so
Right.
yeah,
Whew.
yeah. So we'll try to start wrapping up here, but I always ask everybody. The name of my show is Bringing Life to Characters. So, what is it you do when you're building your characters? What is it you're trying to accomplish to get them to pop off the screen, get them lifelike, that people are, whether people are going to love them or hate them? I mean,
Here's what I've learned over time that works for me, and I don't know about others, but what I've learned to do is when I introduce a new character, or when I've got one of the daughters, Rosie or Carmelita, a year older, or Chuck and Janelle in some sort of an extremist situation, and I'm not sure exactly how they're going to handle it as a character, or how Rosie and Carmelita have grown over that year as a character, or how well I know this brand new character that I'm kind of just introducing to the page. I get them talking. That's what I do. I find a way to get some dialogue happening, and then I almost feel like I'm sitting back now and I'm just watching the dialogue happen. And so I will just start typing a dialogue with this new character or the character that I'm wondering about. The situation doesn't really matter what the situation is necessarily. I just need to get that character talking for my brain to listen to what they're saying, and so then I can figure out who they are. Whether it's a brand new character, I'll find out who they are, or I'll find out who Rosie or Carmelita is in the new book, or where Chuck and Janelle are in their relationship in the new book. And it really, for me, it's always been about that dialogue that has enabled me to find the heart, the soul of the character that I'm trying to create. And I think that's not usual for a lot of folks. I think a lot of folks they'll build a backstory for their character and they'll imagine what brought their character to that point. They'll be much better than I am at seeing in their mind's eye the physical characteristics of that character. I'll introduce a character. I won't even know if it's a male or a female at the beginning. It's just I need this slot filled. I throw a character in there. One of the post-its I have on my computer is write, don't think. And so I try to get my brain out of the way and let the story tell itself almost. And so I need a character. I'll throw that character in. I'll start the character talking, and that character it's beautiful. It will almost, that character, and I'll say an it, because it will become a he or a she, and he or she will suddenly start becoming who they are based on the story that they're telling through their dialogue. And so that's been for me the way I feel like I'm not bringing a character to life. I'm letting the character come to life through their speech, what they're telling me.
I'm a little similar, not quite to that degree, but I'm a little
Okay.
bit like that as well. I'll sometimes start dialogue too. I may still have an idea who the character is, male or female, but
Sure.
that dialogue kind of builds, and then it kind of goes from there. So no, I think that's great. So, do you have any advice for aspiring authors other than don't do it?
No, just the opposite. Just the opposite.
You love it, yeah.
I don't teach, but I talk to a lot of little kids. And honestly, what I tell them is exactly what I have on my computer screen, which is write, don't think. Just get out there and just write. If you want to be an author, the definition, of course, is someone who writes books. Well, a book doesn't write itself, right? I'm not saying anything that everyone doesn't know, but you have to just produce words. And so anyone who's sitting out there wondering how to get it done, it's not how to get it done, is you just have to get it done. And so I'm very comfortable with the notion, but it takes years almost perhaps to get comfortable with the notion that I'm going to write 1,000 words today. Those words may not be any good whatsoever. I may know even while I'm writing them that they're not any good, but I'm not going to let myself get out of my seat until I've pumped out those 1,000 words, because the only way I'm going to get to the good stuff is by getting something written. You have to put words on the page, and that's really what it is. Get your worries out of there. Get the writer's block. Don't let yourself think too much. Think about this. Let the story that you want to tell and just start typing. I always try to think about it, and I'll tell this to elementary school kids especially. You come home from school and your mom or dad asks you, what'd you do that day at school? And what'd you do at recess, whatever it is. And you'll immediately just, you don't, it's not like you have to stop and go, oh, well, my opening sentence should be, it was rainy during recess. It was like, you just tell what happened at recess. You're just, that's what you do as a little kid. And we as adults need to do the same thing. You've got a story to tell, you just start telling it. You can always go back and rewrite. But if you don't have that, if you don't get that first story down, you've got nothing to go back and work with. So, nothing anyone doesn't already know, but you just got to get the work done. Got to do the words.
Good advice. So what events do you have scheduled? Other you mentioned your one is coming up for your 10th anniversary edition.
Yep. Yes, the 10th anniversary edition birthday party is this Thursday, based on folks who are watching this live, April the 3rd, and then in May I'll be with Kevin Fedarko. If people are familiar with Kevin Fedarko's work, an amazing nonfiction author, came out with a book that won the Carnegie Award actually for nonfiction last year. This year, but the book's released last year, called A Walk in the Park. That is all about his adventures walking sideways through the Grand Canyon with a National Geographic photographer, and the travails and the misadventures of doing this amazing year-long hike, and then interspersed with, again, what we're talking about, the dangers that the Grand Canyon and Grand Canyon National Park face right now today, the pressures that are on the park. And it's an amazing book. So he and I are going to be talking about some of the issues that you and I were speaking about earlier, some of the dangers that our national parks and the national park system face right now. So I'll be with him in May in Flagstaff at Brightside Books talking about that. And so those are kind of the two events. I'm not doing a bunch of bookstores. Normally I'll do a tour 2 or 3 weeks to a bunch of bookstores for each of the books that come out. But because this book, I already toured to all the bookstores for this book 10 years ago, I'm relaxing and not doing that piece of it this time around.
And when do you think book 10 is going to be out?
It'll be August of 2026.
26. So
yep.
Like you said, you got some time.
Got some time, but the first draft or whatever, my manuscript is due to the publisher May 15th. So in my world, I've got 6 weeks. So I'm stressing right now.
Yeah, I'm indie. I'm self-published, so I put my own pressures on myself, but I don't have anybody telling me what to do.
Which is great. And again,
in my head.
That's what you have to do. You have to treat it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Little bit of this. All right. So where can people find you? I know we got your website here. Let's see. There we go.
Yep. And on that website, I just had it rebuilt by a wonderful, if anyone wants to know if somebody that's great at websites, feel free to reach out to me through my website. Actually, it's got all the contact info, and I will recommend this person highly. But the website has the links to purchase all the books. It's got the story, it's got the stories of all the books, all the blurbs, and the quotes from all the publications, and very. I think it's a pretty fun website to click around on now. It's just kind of fun and interactive, and it's really great. So that website is fun, and then from there, people can click on IndieBound if they want to buy from independent bookstores, or for each of my books, as well as Amazon and Barnes and Noble. All the books are also available on Audible right now and have been. Really tremendous reader. He's just fantastic. And so they're really fun Audible books, and have become really popular in that world. So they've done really well as Audible books, and so they're available on Audible wherever and all of my books are available kind of wherever books are available. They're there, and I invite people to kind of check them all out. And the one thing I will add is that they are standalone books. We've been talking about the fact that Rosie and Carmelita get a year older with each book, but the books are standalone. And so each book you can learn about the national park, and have an enjoyable time with the family in that national park. And then the family faces down the challenges and the excitement of that park, and then they get collective amnesia over the course of the year, and so they're ready to go to another national park a year later, and it's another standalone book where they've forgotten all about how dangerous the last park was, and they go traipse off to the next park happily and get in danger once again.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. I don't know if it was that panel or another one where we talked about that. It's like everywhere you go, somebody dies, right? It's like,
Yeah.
are you cursed, or is it a blessing? Or
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, the curse of the mystery family that's moving from park to park. They just don't remember the curse, fortunately, or they never go to another national park.
make sure their wills are intact and updated before they go traveling, right? Just
That's
in case.
exactly right.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've done about an hour and 15. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I appreciate folks joining us for this length of time, and I would encourage folks, if you're interested, do reach out to me. I've had wonderful opportunity to be helped and to be supported by other authors, and I'm always happy to talk to folks, whether it's a fan that wants to talk to me about my writing or their writing or anyone else. I'm happy to talk to folks, and so reach out to me through that website. Happy to talk to you.
Do you do a newsletter?
I don't do a newsletter. I just do a blog on my website, and so that blog is ongoing.
And can people get signed books from you?
Absolutely. Maria's Bookshop here in Durango does them. You can get them through Torrey House Press, or you can get them through me personally, and I'll work it through Maria's. But my local the town bookshop here, Maria's Bookshop, has been great about doing that.
Right. Well, thank you, Scott. I appreciate you being on. It was a pleasure talking with you. Enjoyed talking with you at Lefkoe. I know my wife enjoyed talking with you.
It was wonderful meeting both of you at Left Coast Crime, and I really appreciate you having me on your show. This has been a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Ray.
No, that's I enjoyed learning more about you, and hopefully we'll see you down the road. I don't know if we're going to make it to San Francisco next year, but we'll Left Coast, but we'll see. The world is a little up in turmoil these days, so
yeah, we'll see where we end up. Maybe we'll end up sweating together in Nashville. Who knows?
That's right. You never know. So
that's right.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott. Appreciate you being on.
Thanks to everyone out there.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll wrap up tonight. Be sure to please check out my new book. This came out. If I can bring it up on the screen, Justice for the Forgotten. He goes to a state park in this one, but he's actually in Walsenburg down in Colorado. But yes, so a little bit, not national park, but a little bit of state parks involved in this, though that's not where the crimes take place. It's a fictional town, Rio Celeste, but hopefully you'll check it out. Thanks, everyone. We will see you in a couple weeks. I'll have Ann Parker. She was supposed to be on last week, but she got sick going to Left Coast Crime, so we had to push her back a few weeks. So I'll have her here in 2 weeks. I think it's going to be on Tuesday, the 14th, I think is when we're going to do the next one. So, but take care, everyone.